Uhuru.
Yes, Uhuru. Come on
We're
in,
back.
come on in. It's
You're
that time of the
alive.
week, y'all.
I know that's right. How you doing, Mariah?
I am doing really good. How are you doing yourself?
Hey man, you know what? I'm actually just coming out of a cold. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but yeah, I've been coughing up a storm, sneezing up a tornado, and um yeah, but I'm feeling better. I think it's the weather like getting a little bit cooler. I feel like I'm actually starting to feel the fall temperatures, at
Oh, the
least in Virginia.
changes. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, I can't complain. It's getting better. But
Well, you
you
look
know,
great. You look great.
thanks. I try to. Some people say I clean up nice. You know what can I say? Yeah, but come on in, comrades. We are live. Season 2 finale. I heard from the grapevine this is the season 2 finale.
Wow, already the season two finale. We had a show for you last week. We have another one this week. As always, we got it going on right here. So come on in, share the
Yeah,
show, tell your friends. It's that time of the week. We're here. Come
we're
on
here.
in.
That's right. And I always meant to ask you. I love your background. It's like plant based, and yeah, I'm into it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
Come on in, y'all.
yeah.
We
Let
are
us.
about to get it started. We have a show for you today.
Yeah, we got a good one cooking up
We
for you.
We see you in the chat. We see the numbers going up. That's what we like to see. Keep on coming in.
That's
One
right.
Africa Worldview Podcast. It's Monday. It's that time. You know what time it is. Let's get it started.
Uhuru. I am Solyana, managing editor for the longest running Black Power newspaper, The Burning Spear.
Yeah. And you hear it. I'm Dr. Mariah, promotions coordinator for Black Power 96.3 FM radio, based in St. Petersburg, Florida, y'all, but available worldwide through the Black Power 96 mobile app. Our show airs on Black Power 96 radio every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
That's right, and you are now tuned in to the season 2 finale of the One Africa Worldview podcast. It's been an amazing, dynamic season. Like you mentioned, comrade, it's really flown by completely quickly.
Wow. Wow, wow. So yeah, we started off with a bang. How you know how we do, and with the ADOS versus the Tethers episode, that was a good one. And that one was just a hot topic at the time and still really is a hot topic right now. And we covered the 3-year anniversary of the FBI attacks on the Uhuru movement, Black August, the Garvey movement, the Haitian Revolution. I mean, we had it going on. We had updates from the St. Louis tornado, the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, the whole Charlie Kirk fallout and the crisis for white power, and of course, our hottest show to date on Comrade Asada Shakur with Chairman Omali Yeshatela.
That's right. That's right. I mean, watching you just go through that, we did cover so many topics just in, just within season 2. It's really been powerful, and we're just scratching the surface, to be honest. And I'm really excited and can't wait to see what's in store for season 3. But before we get to season 3, let's talk about this episode and what we have in store for our listeners today, right? Y'all know the drill at this point. If you've been a listener of the One Africa Worldview, we're starting off with the Whirlwind weekly update. So to kick us off, let's talk a little bit about the latest in the US, right? So there's a lot that's happened, right? I don't even know really where to begin. But let's talk about what's been in the news cycle for a while now, and that's the US government being shut down, right? And both the ruling classes parties are sort of blaming each other when really it's the fractured unity of the colonial ruling class that's to blame, right? We touched on this particular fracture, especially in the wake of the murder of Charlie Kirk, right? We saw that really show up. And this government shutdown, it's something out of a reality, like a bad reality TV show, really. The sort of back and forth, the name calling and the finger pointing. Meanwhile, the U.S., sort of continues to suffer economic losses, right? It's not really the big, bad superpower that it used to be. And then Trump's efforts to deploy troops in Portland are being shut down by his own appointed federal judge. And then Pete Hegseth, right, the U.S. Secretary of War, which used to be called, the Department of Defense. Now it's, Department of War. So the Secretary of War is being relentlessly trolled online for his outrageous remarks. There's one presentation that he made to Trump that I think is really important for our listeners to hear if you guys haven't already seen it in the news. But he is pretty much confirming that the US government is throwing out any pretext of democracy, right? Abandoning their own constitution to carry out this colonial state repression that we see happening. So let's take a look at that clip real quick.
Restoring victory and clarity as an end state, restoring intentionality to the use of force. So at your direction, Mr. President, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts. It's going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So this War Department, Mr. President, just like America, is back. Thank you.
I really can't believe that fool started rhyming like he's
rhyming. That's what I was going.
He said, if the glove don't fit, you mustn't quit. That's basically.
He practiced that one.
No, he really did. He had to have had some teleprompter up there. That's hilarious. But that's the plan, y'all. And like we said, it's just them being super out there about what their plans is for moving forward and how they deal with people that they are deeming their enemy, right? So there we have it right there. But Comrade Mariah, what's happening with the Global Sumud Flotilla?
Yeah, on October 1st, the settler colony known as Israel's Navy began to kidnap the crew of the Global Sumud Flotilla, an international fleet of civilian and boats carrying a symbolic amount of food and actually baby formula to Gaza City in occupied Palestine. So earlier, at least one boat was actually hit by Israeli drones when it was docked in Tunisia. And participants came from countries such as Turkey, Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Malaysia, Japan, Colombia, Mexico, as well as from South Africa. And a Turkish participant reports that the Greta Thunberg was dragged by her hair even and just forced to crawl on the floor over there and even kiss the occupation entity's flag. Wow. So one participant reports that all participants were strip searched and the occupation soldiers looked in their mouths and between their teeth and just checked it, just too much there. And they were actually handcuffed so tight that it cut off the circulation there. And they were just thrown into these freezing cold vans with very little clothes on. And they were given food that had bugs in it, just forced to drink all this dirty water. And the Turkish participants were forced to drink from the toilet even. So just all these participants were just put into these groups of 15 into these cells that were meant for only 5 people to be in there to begin with. And these cells had names written in blood on them in Arabic. So these had been written by Palestinian prisoners, including Palestinian mothers writing their children's names even. And the flotilla participants, who the entity labels as terrorists, thus experience just a very small fraction of what hordes Palestinians endure under this whole barbaric occupation, actually. And as of today, 157 participants are still captive. One's actually still missing, and a UK journalist has been returned to the UK, but has now been arrested by the UK police for violating the bail under the UK's Terrorism Act. So Protests in support of Palestine and the flotilla erupted in many cities all across the place, including Texas, Madrid, Barcelona, Lisbon, Paris, Rome. It was over in Istanbul, Athens, Mexico City, and Kuala Lumpur. And in Italy, 1 million people were in the streets, significantly in addition to the protests, intensifying this whole demand that the entity's occupation of Palestine end. And many protesters are angry with their own governments throughout this, and it just really did nothing to actually protect the flotilla. And the arrest of the UK journalist has actually made it very clear to the British that the UK government and the occupation entity are working together when it comes to this, and it's against the UK's own people, y'all. So some Spanish people even destroyed a Starbucks sign. Turkish people threw large stones at the US consulate, and Greeks attacked the Israel embassy over there. An activist group threw paint on a Wells Fargo over in London. So yeah, it's really, really a lot of outrage there. So, wow. So, Comrade Solyana, what's the whole latest with the alliance of the Sahel States?
Yeah, I appreciate you taking us through that. And it really connects well to like what is happening with the lines of the Sahel States. And because what we're seeing really are just many iterations of war crimes being, done to the Palestinian people, but also people, unarmed people who may not even be politically one way or another way, just trying to go and help, right? They themselves are becoming victims of war crimes. And, this connects to what's happening with the Alliance of the Sahel States, because about a week or so ago, on September 20, I believe, the Alliance of the Sahel States, which we've talked about before on the show, we actually was one of our headlines, I think, in our very first episode. This is an alliance made up of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, all countries located in Western Africa. They made the decision to leave the ICC, right, the International Criminal Court, because they rightly recognized that the court's jurisdiction had transformed into an instrument of neocolonial repression in the hands of imperialism. This is their own wording of the situation, right? They see the ICC as this neocolonial tool. And they're right, because out of the 33 cases that the ICC has opened and dealt with, 32 of them have been against African leaders, right? This is the International Criminal Court. And out of 32 of the cases have been against Africans, and the other one was against a Filipino. So all colonized people, right? And the ICC, like many other international organizations, like the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, or even the World Bank, are really just institutions that, seek to police colonized people and circumvent their sovereignty. They're organized by colonizing nations in the wake of the Second Imperialist War, or World War II, in the name of, holding war criminals accountable, right? But conveniently, war criminals to them are colonized people, right, in the whole world. And in the joint statement that the Alliance of the Sahel States released, they say, quote, "The ICC has proven itself incapable of handling and prosecuting proven war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide, and crimes of aggression, as well as calling the ICC out for being a global example of selective justice." And I know that's right. And though it's reported that, leaving the ICC is not as simple as a sort of declaration, there comes with it a sort of longer process that can even take up to a year. These African leaders still have the agency to not comply with, with the ICC as leaders of sovereign states. They don't have to acquiesce to whatever demands the ICC makes at the end of the day. And so in the same joint statement they released, they say that they will implement indigenous mechanisms for the consolidation of peace and justice. So they're not just breaking away to break away, but also at the same time saying, we're going to look to ourselves to deal with crimes against our people. And, I think this is an example of a really anti-colonial revolutionary act that's really, I think, beginning to like expose and unravel this sort of insidious and obscure ways that Europe and the West has sort of maintained its stranglehold on African people, on colonized people in general, right? The ICC, the IMF, the UN, the World Bank, they all position themselves as global agents of peacekeepers, right? But really, they're really entities of maintaining a status quo, the way that the world, they're interested in keeping at bay African self-determination at both the national and international levels. And I think it's important to understand that breaking away from these global entities, like leaving the French economic zone, right, a really big deal, and also really asserting your sovereignty in this way poses a direct threat to the West's profit margins, right? Because they can no longer dictate what African countries have to do and have to fall in line with. And I think that's what people like Patrice Lumumba, Samora Machel, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and even Nasser were all doing. All these other African leaders in the 60s and 70s, this is what they were trying to do, and that's what got a lot of them killed, right? And I think we're seeing the rise of that again through the likes of the alliance of the Sahel States. And I think this decision is actually, it is supported by African people on the ground. And we actually have a clip from African News showing people in Ouagadougou, which is the capital of Burkina Faso, really uniting with the decision to leave the ICC. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
People in Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali have welcomed the Alliance of Sahel States' withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. The 3 members of the West African Alliance on Monday announced their immediate departure from the body, calling it an instrument of neocolonialist repression. It was a good decision if we want to continue in the logic of our total independence. It was high time we left this court, which was practically designed or pre-designed only for African leaders and not for all the leaders of the world. I welcomed the news with great satisfaction and joy because we are sovereign, and every sovereign state must be able to take responsibility in all areas, including social and economic justice. Created in 2023, the AES Confederation is committed to permanently breaking ties with neocolonialism.
Antoine Boni, Africa News, Ouagadougou.
Listen, breaking ties with neocolonialism. I don't know about you, but we are behind that, right? We are interested in breaking the ties of neocolonialism. So with that, Comrade Mariah, I know you have more for us regarding the settler colony of the U.S. and ICE raids, so please take us through that.
Yeah. So on October the 1st, ICE and all these other agents raid a South Shore Chicago apartments complex. They raided this complex, which was a majority African neighborhood. And for some of us, these ICE raids were seen by the African colony in the U.S. as an immigrant issue, and that we were exempt because we were born here. But when ICE, FBI, and the ATF invaded this neighborhood, they descended on this with these Black Hawk helicopters using these flashbang grenades that we see, and armed with all these other weapons, wearing a mask, dragging these Black residents from their beds, including children, y'all, and throwing them right into vans. And now we're coming to realize that we are targets too. So the government agents, these zip-tied residents, arrested 37 residents. They broke down these doors, ransacked their apartments, just really all this destruction and interruption, y'all. And some reports even say that the children were thrown into vans, and when the children were released from these vans, they didn't have on clothes. So, I mean, just all this having to go through all this outrage in this local Black community, y'all. And historically, there has always been a division of labor between the FBI and other agencies, and target domestically colonized, and ICE that targets Mexicans, the Central and South Americans, indigenous people, and others with origins outside of the settler colonial state. But the convergence of the objectives of these agents treating the African colony as foreign enemies, y'all, in this explicit way is just the ICE raid, and just this merely implicit that through the police occupation of this Black community, that just the signals of the unraveling of the colonial narrative that the African colony is American indicates the sheer panic of this whole colonial state. So it is a breaking, and it is breaking that it's the rules that allowed it to maintain its social order of seizure of securing white people and the security of Black people with an assumed U.S. citizenship, y'all. But the ICE raid on South Shore has ended that whole security there. There's not security for anyone. No one is safe through this. And it was later seen that and revealed that a slumlord called ICE on these residents of the South Shore and several other apartment complexes owned by that same company as pretext for expelling Black residents for the purpose of what? Gentrification. We talked about it here. We're seeing it happening all around the country now. And this indicates that the developers are no longer content with a slow process of letting property slowly crumble but resorting to immediate armed expulsion by using these ICE forces, y'all. And this has implications for every other Black neighborhood throughout the United States. And the flotilla and the convergence of these whole ICE and just the FBI, just all this shows a sharp intensification of the crisis in the system, y'all. And so many are just really looking for a way forward, and African internationalism is that way.
Yeah, I know that's right. And I appreciate you taking us through it because, just what we've talked about even in today's set of headlines, we've mentioned that we're in this sort of era of like bold-faced colonialism, right? They no longer need to hide the way that the system works. And so we'll get a little bit into this in our primary objective, but, we have this White House memo. We have this video of Pete Hegseth talking about, I can't remember his rhymes right now, but talking about, we're gonna be at you, and this and all of our headlines sort of reveal the practical sort of on the ground, expressions of that with the ICE raids and people just fighting back against that. So I just wanted to say that, but yeah, this update on ICE, this it really gives us the perfect segue into our next segment, right? The primary objective, where we're discussing the presidential memorandum regarding, what they're saying is domestic terrorism and political violence, and arming our, listeners with a workshop on what to do if the FBI or other forms of the colonial state comes a knocking at your door, right? So Mariah, take us through that.
Yeah. And I mean, we're saying it happened all around. So we have to know what to do when they come, y'all, and they will come. So just as we mentioned in last week's episode, the U.S. President Donald Trump has issued this memorandum on September 25th of 2025, and the same day as Assata Shakur's passing, basically stating that they're going to target groups who differ ideologically from white nationalist Christian conservatives. That's if you're anything different than white nationalist Christian conservatives, then you're on the radar, y'all. And more than just targeting is going to happen there. It will be working to designate these groups and organizations as domestic terrorists and conspirators of political violence. So Trump is saying out loud that the plans that mirror those of the COINTELPRO documents from the 1960s, y'all. And unlike the 1960s, however, we have now been made aware of their strategy. We know what's going on. So we must prepare ourselves by first knowing what our rights are. And when confronted by these colonial states, which is the FBI, the police, ICE, whatever form they're coming in, let's just take a look at some of the definitions that they are using to determine who fits these categories, y'all. So there are common recurrent motivations and uniting this pattern of violent and terrorist activities under umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. So this movement portray foundational American principles, support for law enforcement and border control as fascists to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. And this anti-fascist lie has become the organizing rallying cry used by domestic terrorists to wage a violent assault against democratic institutions, constitutional rights, and fundamental American liberties. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and moralities. As described in the order of September 22 of 2025, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, the groups and entities that perpetrate this extremism have created a movement that embraces and elevates violence to achieve policy outcomes, including justifying additional assassinations. For example, Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin engraved the bullets used in the murder with the so-called anti-fascist rhetoric, which was not true at all. And the United States requires its national strategy to investigate and disrupt the networks, all these entities and organizations that actually have formed political violence, so that law, and they name them and foment political violence, so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. So through this comprehensive strategy, law enforcement will disband and uproot networks, entities, and organizations that promote organized violence, violent intimidation, conspiracies against rights, and other efforts to disrupt the functioning of a democratic society. Basically anything they want it to be, y'all. So we can go on and see that Section 2 of this same memorandum says that investigating domestic terrorist organizations. So let's look at that. It reads, the National Joint Terrorism Task Force and its local offices, collectively known as the JTTFSs, shall coordinate and supervise a comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to suppress lawful political activity or obstruct the rule of the law. Wow.
Right. And that this is their ABCs of the 2020s version of the COINTELPRO. Just this time it's not hidden. This time it's smack dab in front of the White House website, right? So yeah, because of that, in today's show, we are, presenting to you a workshop on what to do if the FBI comes knocking, right, as the namesake of of today's episode. This workshop was prepared by Colin Poirot of the National Lawyers Guild and was first actually presented in a Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa webinar towards the start of that campaign, right? We learned firsthand back in 2022 under a Democratic president, no less, right, that the FBI will come knocking at revolutionary organizations that are interested in African self-determination, right? And so as organizers and as Africans, it's important that we keep this information in mind and really sit our loved ones down to, review the same material so that we can, we can push back against colonial state terror when we are organized. So let's take a look at that.
Comradely greetings, and thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Great. So again, my name is Colin Poirot. I'm an attorney with the National Lawyers Guild, or the NLG, which you've probably heard about. I've been involved with different anti-imperialist movements and people's struggles for the better part of a decade, and it's really an enormous honor to be here with you all today with these courageous and lifelong freedom fighters in the fight against FBI repression and intimidation. I'm here as a member of the National Lawyers Guild, which again, it's a nationwide organization that was founded to provide legal support to radical movements with radical attorneys. And, and historically we've supported labor struggles, anti-imperialist resistance, civil rights movements, lots of different progressive organizing. But today I've been asked to give just a quick rundown on the best practices and kind of what you can expect and what you should do if you get approached by the FBI for questioning, if the FBI is trying to talk to you, whether they're knocking on your door at home, approaching you in the street, in your car, in your community space, wherever they may approach you. These are going to be some tips that will help keep you and your people safe. And I'm going to go a little bit quickly, but there should be a Q&A at the end of this meeting, and my email is also on this slide in case you want to email me any specific questions. So the next slide, just to get started, the first thing you may be thinking is, why would the FBI approach me? You may think I haven't done anything illegal, so why is the FBI trying to talk to me? Does it mean I'm being arrested or investigated? And the answer is not necessarily. So there are many, many reasons, both real and fraudulent, for why the FBI may approach you and may try to talk to you. So let's start off talking about some of the real reasons why the FBI tries to talk to people. Of course, it's possible that they are investigating you or people you may know, or they could just be fishing for information about people that they assume maybe you're affiliated with them because you're friends on social media or you're on a listserv or something like that. And they may just be fishing for information just to see if you will do them the favor of telling them something that they don't know. But it's also possible that they're simply harassing you for your organizing activities or associations and trying to scare you and stop you from continuing on with that important work. They could be hoping to coerce you into becoming an informant if you tell them something inaccurate during their interview with you, during their conversation. That gives them the opportunity to later come back and say, hey, you lied to us and now we have leverage over you, which again is why I'm going to really emphasize many times in this that we are strongly encouraging you, do remain silent, do not speak to the FBI. On top of those real reasons why they might approach you, they have a whole slew of not very creative to quite creative reasons that they may give you, and they may say, this is why we're here. And these are all false pretexts. So they may say things like, we think you're the target of an identity theft, or we're investigating something and we don't think you were involved, but we just want to confirm you weren't involved with that, were you? Or as happened with Director Akile, they could even say, we think your car has been broken into and we need you to come outside and confirm and see if everything's okay with your car. You should assume the FBI is lying to you. When they approach you, you should assume always that they are not going to tell you the real reason why they want to speak to you. And because of that, the bottom line here is you really cannot know the FBI's true purpose during that initial interaction. They are not required by law to tell you their real reasons, which is why the safest thing to do is to just not engage with them at all at that initial stage. Instead, you really need to stick to some best practices. So the next slide covers the first of those best practices, which is stay silent. This really is the most powerful thing you can do. It's the number one most important thing. You have the right to remain silent, with the very narrow exception that if you're stopped in a car, you can be, if you're driving, you can be forced to provide proof that you are driving with a valid driver's license. And in some states, you are required to confirm your name if they ask you, but that's it. You are not required to say a single word beyond that. This is the most important thing I'm going to say in this whole training. And it's also sometimes the most difficult thing to do in the moment, because these agents are trained investigators. They spend hours and hours and hours specifically learning how to use persuasion, trickery, and deceit to make a person feel scared or guilty or impolite for refusing to cooperate with the FBI. And you have to put those feelings aside in the moment and remember what I said earlier. The FBI is not going to tell you their real reasons, and they are not your friend. They are not there to help you. They are there hoping you will tell them something they can then use to harm you and your community. On top of that, as I mentioned, you're not going to know their real reasons for wanting to speak with you, so you're simply not going to be in a position to gain anything strategic or useful from an initial conversation with them when they first approach you. A really important thing to remember here is that making a false statement to the FBI is considered a federal crime, and they can use that to arrest you. So this is really important because they use it in really deceitful and cunning and conniving ways. What they'll do is they'll research you ahead of time. They'll find out a bunch of information about you. Then they'll approach you and say, we just want to have a really simple conversation. We're going to ask you just some really casual questions. Were you at this organization's event? Do you know these people? Are you part of this group? They already know the answer to these questions based on their research, because they will thoroughly research your social media, et cetera. And they're hoping you'll say something like, oh, no, I don't really know that person. And then they can use that as a reason to arrest you, which gives them more leverage over you. Again, bottom line, do not answer their questions, because you're really opening yourself up to a trap. So let's say that you do end up answering a few of their questions before you realize, wait a minute, I'm getting a weird vibe. I'm no longer comfortable. I don't want to talk to you anymore until I call my attorney. They are required to respect that. Even if you've already started talking to them, you can end that conversation at any point in time and say, from now on, I don't want to speak to you unless I have an attorney with me. So the bottom line is the best thing you can do is to stay silent and get the agent's contact information. There is nothing to be gained. Truly, there is nothing to be gained by speaking to an FBI agent without an attorney present. Anything you want to say or your organization decides is useful to say to the FBI, which that's almost nothing, you can say that later with your attorney present, after you've talked to your attorney and your comrades and figured out the risks involved. And if you decide you do want to talk to them, again, don't do it at that initial interaction. That's the bottom line. The only exception is if the FBI is in your home and there is a medical emergency with someone in the house that you need them to know about because life or death is at stake. That's really the only exception where you would want to proactively say something while the FBI is there. But that's usually not the case. So again, that's a rare exception. So what should you say? These are just some sample things you can say. I would recommend repeating them because, again, it's really hard in the moment when you're really nervous and stressed and the FBI are shouting and they've got weapons and badges, everything else. Just repeat, I'm not speaking with you. Or if you're more comfortable, you can say, I have nothing to say to you. My lawyer will contact you. Or even, I'm going to talk to my lawyer first and then I'll let you guys know how I feel. If you're more comfortable with that, that's perfectly fine. Either way, that should end the conversation. Remember to get their business card because your lawyer will need that. So the next best practice is to document the situation. So immediately after the FBI leaves, you really should sit down and write down as many notes as possible right away. So the things that you want to write down are the agent's name, telephone number, what specific agency they're from. If they say the FBI, okay. If they say I'm from a joint terrorism task force or local police, whatever they say, you want to write that down. You should also write down any questions that they asked you and any answers that you gave. That's going to be really, really helpful for people in your community to know what to expect and to maybe get a sense of what the questions are going to be and what the FBI is really looking for. Also write down a physical description of the agent in case that comes up later in a future civil lawsuit. If you're trying to show that the FBI conducted an unlawful search or seizure, you may need to be able to provide a description of which agent did it. So be sure you write that down. And then if there are any witnesses to the interaction, try to get their name and contact information as well. That can be helpful. If the FBI damages property of yours, let's say they have a search warrant and they bust down the door, be sure you take photos of all of the property damage as well. And we say to write this down immediately after the interaction because, we all know in that space, it can be very, very overwhelming. That's a great question in the chat about recording with a cell phone. I'm gonna talk about that in a half a second. So another option that you have is you can video or audio record the agents. So if the FBI knocks and you can hear them outside the door, they say, we're the FBI, we need you to come out. You can immediately start video recording, audio recording the conversation. There's a few limitations to that. You cannot do something that the FBI or that a judge would consider interfering with their investigation. So the best thing to do is to stand far away, a few feet away from the agent. And if they say move or they say get out of the way, you should do that because you don't want to be accused of interfering with their investigation. Another, just a rule of thumb is you should consider your own safety. If you feel that the situation is very tense and would be escalated by attempting to film it and you don't feel safe doing that, I would not advise you to do that. I would advise you to do it as long as you feel you can video record safely, but you do have a right to do it. So if you feel you can do it safely, I strongly recommend doing it. It's very good for spreading the word and for educating other people and giving people a sense of what to expect. It's really powerful if you have a video of the FBI trying to get into your home and knocking and asking you to open the door, and you follow these steps and you say, no, I'm not speaking to you. Give me your card, slide it under the door. My attorney will call you. If you have video of that, that's really powerful as a tool to inspire and give other people the confidence to do that same thing. So I do encourage video recording with the small exception that you don't want to put yourself at physical risk, which is something that you can decide in the moment. The next thing you want to do, the next best practice, is you want to contact an attorney immediately as soon as the FBI leaves. You may think, I don't plan to talk to the FBI. I haven't done anything illegal and I'm not under arrest. So why do I need a lawyer? I don't plan to call them back. I don't need a lawyer. Or the agents may even tell you, hey, don't worry, you don't need a lawyer. We're not accusing you of anything. You're fine. Ignore all of that. You absolutely want to call a lawyer. No matter what happens, no matter whether you never speak to them again or you do decide you want to call them to ask why are they messing with you, either way, you're going to be better off if you have an attorney. Here's why. Once you tell your attorney what happened and you give them the agent's contact information, there are two super significant ways that your attorney can help you right off the bat. The first thing is your attorney can shield you from the FBI's harassment. So usually once you find an attorney and you let them know what's going on and you give them the agent's contact information, the first thing they'll do is call the FBI agent, and they won't reveal any of your information. They will say something to the effect of, my name is Colin Perot, or whatever the attorney's name. I am an attorney representing my client, so-and-so, your name, and I am calling to put you on notice that my client does not wish to speak with you without me present. And if you need to contact them in the future, you are required to go through me. So your attorney can be a shield for you so that the FBI doesn't just show up every day, standing outside your house waiting for you and trying to scare you and intimidate you. Your attorney can say, if you have any reason to contact my client from now on, you are required to contact me, which is really helpful, even for just peace of mind. And it puts the FBI on notice that you are resisting, you are exercising your rights, you are represented by an attorney, and that you're fighting back against their attempt to intimidate and politically repress your organizing. A phone call from your attorney is the best way to stop the FBI from coming back to your house or trying to contact you again. They may still try to do that, but legally speaking, they would be required to tell your attorney from that point forward. The second immediate benefit, why I really say no matter what your plan is strategically, you should call an attorney, is because your attorney can also help you gather information. So in that phone call, they might say something like, I understand you approached my client and you asked to speak to my client. They're currently deciding whether they wish to speak with you, and I need to know a few more things before I can advise them. They can say that even if you have no intention of speaking with them, your attorney can still say, oh yeah, we're considering it. And in that conversation, sometimes the FBI is willing to tell your attorney very useful information, like, they'll say, this is why we approached your client. This is the evidence that we are currently looking at. These are the crimes we're investigating, or, we just want to know more about your client's affiliation with a specific organization, whatever. Your attorney can get that information much more safely than you can. The FBI is probably not going to tell you, but they may tell your attorney once they're trying to convince your attorney to advise you to have that conversation. They're more inclined to share information. And that's a great way to shift the power balance between you and the FBI. So remember, your attorney can have this conversation with the FBI without revealing a single thing about your intentions, politically, legally, strategically. And even if you have decided you are definitely not speaking to the FBI, your attorney can still call them and try to get that information. In reality, there truly is almost never an advantage to speaking with the FBI, even with an attorney present. Because the FBI can make you all sorts of promises and guarantees. They can say, oh, if your client gives us X information, we can guarantee that, we're not going to harass their family, or we'll give them XYZ legal benefit. There's no law requiring them to follow through with that. They can promise you the world and then give you nothing. That's how imbalanced this power relationship is. And yeah, the FBI would absolutely lie, but they're not. To an attorney, they should not be lying to your attorney. With an attorney, it's different. They would just be reluctant to provide information if they didn't want to provide information. But they're usually not going to just lie straight out to your attorney. But either way, it is a way to get more information. And just to help you find an attorney, there's a few resources that I included on here. As I mentioned, the National Lawyers Guild is nationwide. We have chapters all over the country. So you can go to the website that I put on the slide, and you can see what is the nearest chapter. I know there's a chapter specifically for St. Louis. I know there's a bunch of chapters in Florida as well, and they can usually connect you with a people's attorney who can assist with your legal defense. You can also Google your local bar association, which is your local association of licensed attorneys. They are often in a position to connect you with a criminal defense attorney or someone someone who can help you. Lastly, there are probably other activists in your movement and in your area that have had these similar issues, and it's good to ask them if they have any good attorneys they would recommend. And then the fourth best practice that I wanted to just briefly say is alert your community. So once you've had a chance to gather your thoughts, you've made your notes about what's going on, you should absolutely inform people you organize with, people from organizations that you guys work with, anyone else who you think would benefit from this information or who the FBI might approach. You should immediately start spreading the word if you feel safe doing so, because the more aware people are that the FBI is in this neighborhood asking people about this kind of an event or this kind of an organization, the more confident they'll be, the more comfortable they'll be, and the more prepared they'll be if the FBI does approach those people. And this is just a photo of an example. This is a press conference that we had with the December 12th movement in Brooklyn that was mentioned earlier that I spoke at. And then the next slide is just a quick note that I wanted to include before I wrap up about warrants and searches, because this is something that, it's kind of misunderstood. So the 4 steps that I just went over, the 4 best practices, those are going to be useful no matter where the FBI approaches you, in your home, your office, your car, anywhere else. But I also wanted to say this about warrants for arrests and searches, which are really important if they're approaching you at your home, if the FBI comes to your house. The best thing you can do if you get approached in your home is to refuse to open the door without a valid warrant. If the FBI knocks and says, "Hi, can we come in?" The answer is always nope, not without a warrant, because you should never voluntarily open the door to an FBI agent. If they have the right to go in your home, they're going in whether you let them in or not. You gain nothing by voluntarily letting them into your home. You are always in a better position with the door closed and the agents on the other side of the door than once you've opened the door and they're sitting in your living room. So again, if the agent says, "Hi, hope you're doing well, just want to come inside and ask you some questions," you say, "Nope, not without a warrant," or "I do not consent to this search and I'm not opening the door." They may force their way in, whether or not they have a warrant, but you're setting yourself up for a much better court case down the line if you verbally say, "I'm not letting you into my home without a warrant." Don't physically stop them from going in, because you will very likely be injured, and it's probably in your best interest to not physically stop them. But if it is an illegal search and you can show that you did not consent, you may be able to stop them from using anything they find in your house in a later court case. If they do say, "We have a warrant," you should, again, don't open the door. Ask them to hold it up to the peephole, or if there's a window right near the door, they can hold it up to the window, or they can slide it under your door if you have a little bit of a gap. You definitely want to see the warrant before you open a door. The warrant must have a few things to be valid, and the FBI shows up with invalid warrants a lot. This, just because they say they have a warrant and it says warrant at the top, does not mean it's valid. Doesn't mean you have to do a single thing. To be valid, the warrant has to be signed by a judge. It has to specifically identify the premises that they're going to search and the time of day that it can be searched, as well as other identifying information. If it's an arrest warrant, make sure it has your name and all of your information correct. Because if they don't have a warrant, they're not getting in. They should not, you should never allow them into your home without a warrant. A final note to consider is just about shared spaces. So if you have roommates, or if if they approach you in a community space, your consent is required for them to search any of your private spaces. So if let's say you have a roommate, but you have separate bedrooms, your roommate is home. The FBI approaches. Your roommate hasn't had this training and says, "Okay, sure, you can, I'll talk to you guys." They come in. A roommate can consent to a search of the living room, kitchen, hallways, shared spaces, but they cannot consent to a search of your bedroom unless you share that bedroom with someone else. If you have a partner that you live with, or a roommate who shares a bedroom, then they could also consent to a search of that bedroom. So you want to be really clear ahead of time about which spaces are public and private, and you really want to make sure that your private spaces are treated as private. That's the best way to set yourself up for a future legal argument that the search was illegal. So if you're a renter, if you're renting an apartment from a landlord, you will want to check your rent agreement, your lease, to see what rights are spelled out in the lease. It should clarify whether the landlord has the right to consent to, or to allow people into your apartment. But that'll be specified in the lease. And again, if you live with a roommate, be sure to talk to them about the importance of not consenting to a search. And say, you definitely don't consent to them searching my room, but also don't consent to them searching the living room or the kitchen, because that could hurt you, even if your roommate considers themselves to be non-political. And then the final slide from my presentation, the last thing, is just to wrap up. Again, these are the key points. If there's just quick 4 steps that you should always remember if the FBI shows up, this is the way to keep yourself as safe as possible, to help your movement stay as strong as possible, and it puts the FBI on notice that you have a strong defense, you know your rights, and they should not continue to try to harass you or intimidate you because you're not standing for it, and they're not going to be successful. And so I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that you all do feel at least a little bit more prepared for what to do when the FBI comes knocking. And Thank you again for having me. Hands off Uhuru, hands off
Hands off
Africa.
Africa.
Uhuru, that's right. Once again, that was Colin Poirot of the National Lawyers Guild on what to do if the FBI comes knocking right. And I also want to say that this particular workshop will be posted as a standalone video and available on our very own The Burning Spear TV YouTube channel. So if there's anything you didn't catch, anything that you want to just make sure that you at least want to write down and have on deck, you can go ahead and do that. And I just really want to salute this presentation, right? Because you need to know what to do when you're accosted by the FBI, and just really understanding that the FBI does not have our interests at heart, right? Because by the time they're at your door, they've already been looking at you. They've already been searching up what you're searching up. They've done their homework, right? So knowing they don't have your interests at heart, no matter what they say, no matter what kind of lies they're telling you to your face, knowing that will really help you act accordingly, and knowing the rights will go, I think, a really long way to protect yourself and those around you as much as you can in this kind of situation. So just wanted to salute Colin Poirot for that presentation and the National Lawyers Guild on what to do. But with that, I believe that concludes our primary objective for today. Comrade, do you?
I did want to get in and just real quick before we move on I did want to mention, well, I was writing it down, just how he said, you write this stuff down, and that's what I was doing. And I want to highlight what he said, just so we can drive those points. First thing is, he said, you start recording if you can. And if you're at home, you don't even open that door to begin with. Second thing there is that you tell them, I'm not talking to y'all. I'm not talking to y'all. My lawyer will contact you. That third thing was that you write down anything about that interaction, any questions, any descriptions of these folks, anything that happened there, you want to keep track of that. And then fourth thing, you're calling that attorney. You're calling them as soon as they leave, y'all. And there's really no advantage, he let us know, to speak to them at any point, even when the attorney is present. We know they're gonna lie. So when it comes down to that fifth thing is telling all your people that they came. Let everybody know they're out here, y'all. And like he mentioned, y'all need to tell anybody that you live with. Don't open that door. Your boyfriends, your mama, them badass kids, you let them know when somebody come knocking, you don't open that door for anybody there. So yeah, I got it written here, and we're ready. We're ready.
We're right on. Thank you so much, Mariah, for enumerating it like that. That was really, really helpful, and just putting that into bite-sized information for anyone who might have missed some of those points. So thank you so much. With that has been our primary objective for today's episode. Comrade Mariah, you want to take us through our announcements before we wrap up real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. So, if you're interested in getting connected with the Uhuru movement by way of joining, supporting, or volunteering, y'all, here are some upcoming events that you can tap right on into. So, up first, on Saturday, October 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern, you can join the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition for a special webinar to announce the Latin America front of the coalition. And this is extending the reach of the struggle to protect and safeguard our right to anti-colonial free speech throughout this hemisphere, y'all. So stay tapped in with us to receive the registration information for this. And if you happen to be in the Philly that same Saturday, October the 11th, you can join the northern region of the African People's Socialist Party at the last Uhuru flea market of the season at Clark Park. And you can support African businesses. You can re-up on your record collection, your book collection, jewelry, and natural hair and body care products right there, all while buying Black Power. Yeah, so that will be there on Saturday, October 11th. And also on November the 1st through 2nd, you can join the Black is Back Coalition for the Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations for their 17th annual Black People's March on the White House. And this is themed Don't Agonize, Organize. And the 2-day event, y'all, features a pre-rally and conference there. So you can get more information over there and to register at blackisbackcoalition.org. That is blackisbackcoalition.org. So y'all, for more events and everything else going on, you can visit theburningspear.com for the /events for anything that we have going on. That's theburningspear.com/events. And of course, we'll be keeping you updated here on One Africa. So this may be the end of season 2, but we want to make sure that you stay locked in. So you subscribe. So when we're back, you will know. And any of the socials there, we will keep you locked in and follow us there, y'all. So
True. That's right. That's right. And I just appreciate the chairman saying, Uhuru, don't be so unsettled by violent pre-dawn raids that you will talk with them, hoping they will be less repressive. That's right. And I just want to salute our chairman for that message and a great, advice to wrap up season 2. So thank you once again to all of our viewers and listeners. Like Comrade Mariah said, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get notifications for when we're back with season 3, because we will be back, y'all. We stream on the Burning Spirit TV YouTube. We're on Burning Spirit Media Rumble, and now on Black Power 96.3 FM radio based in St. Pete, Florida, and streaming globally on the Black Power 96 FM app. So until next time, until season 3, One Africa,
One Nation.
World.